This episode of the Cinema Psycho Show is sponsored by Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code CINEMA20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code CINEMA20 at manscaped.com. And he's just making the worst faces ever. It's almost like Hitchcock didn't know what a drunk looked like. One of the funniest scenes in this whole movie, Thornhill is completely drunk off his fucking ass, and he's driving this car because they're trying to shove the car off a cliff and kill him. Using his super drunk powers, is able to drive this fucking car. Like, probably I'd say he drove it for a good, what would you say, mile and a half?
Oh, at least, yeah.
At least a mile and a half before finally crashing. Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Coddington, my fellow co-host and filmmaker, John Woolscroft.
Note to self, be framed for murder so you could bang random bitches on a train. A stranger on a train, another Hitchcock movie.
That's another one. Yeah, that's another one. Well, we're on another Hitchcock kick here. This time we're looking at the 1959. What was it? Cary Grant and James Mason, Martin Landau, Ava Marie Saint led North by Northwest, a movie that I had never seen up until last night.
I have not seen this film since I think I was maybe 13 or 14, and I went, I want to get into movies because I want to make movies. So I started probably watching movies outside of my pedigree for a 13-year-old. And I think I saw this, as a teenager, and I remembered almost nothing outside of the plane scene that's shooting at Cary Grant. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe how little I retained of this movie.
So what you're telling me is this was your I Became a Filmmaker film?
Oh, no, not this film. Just films in general. So I started at 13 years old. I was watching Silence of the Lambs and Citizen Kane. And my dad probably was just excited that I was into good movies, but he probably should have been maybe wait till you're a little older to appreciate some of these movies, but yeah,
no, I mean, for me, North by Northwest, I mean, I always knew that it was a good movie because everyone talks about it. But I mean, for me, it was I just never saw the allure of it. I mean, the only thing I remember from talking about, I think we mentioned it in grad school, was just the whole airplane chase thing. And for me, I looked at it from more look at the visual effects of this time. That's what I looked at it from. But
sounds about right. Yeah,
that's me. That's me. But I never was this is the greatest film of all time, and a lot of people now consider it one of the greatest films of all time. I don't know if I buy that.
Just speaking of Hitchcock, I was I'm curious where they rank certain Hitchcock movies, and I went to Collider.com, not for any reason other than that was the first link to look at Hitchcock's 30 best films, and this one came in third of his best movies of all time, 2 being Psycho, the movie he makes the following year, and number 1, Vertigo. So
that makes sense. Yeah. I think this one especially is his most non-Hitchcock film. You know what I mean? A lot of people think of Hitchcock, they think of him as the creepy guy, he's the creeper, the master of suspense, master of terror, and this really isn't a lot of that. It's there's goofiness in this, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, there is the suspense, but yeah, it's undercut by dialogue that nobody would ever say ever. I love old movies like this where people do not talk like human beings. And yeah, you could say people in Aaron Sorkin movies or Quentin Tarantino or Kevin Smith they also don't talk like people. And that's fair, but
true.
It's supposed to be stylized. It's supposed to be hyper realistic, but it's nobody talks, and I refuse to believe I wasn't alive in the 50s, contrary to our Gen Z fans who think like, oh, John's 100 years old, but I wasn't alive in the 50s. But I refuse to believe people talk to each other like this.
No.
But so yeah, there's a lot of like glib back and forth, so that kind of undercut the tension. And I don't know if that was accidental or purposeful.
You know what's funny is like when we were talking about Rope, and when I was watching Rope with my wife, I mentioned about the way people talk in those films, and it's a mid-Atlantic thing. It's actually like the style of speech is because of vaudeville and radio. Like that's the thing. Like if you go back a ways, years prior, people who were performing on radio shows and in early films, they had this very transatlantic type of speech, and it still kind of comes through even in this film.
And, obviously talkies have been around, I think, for about 20 years now, but it takes a long time to shed that. You need to enunciate ever so clearly and put pauses in your dialogue so our audio guy can pick it up clearly, fella. So.
Or it's like, you're a woman, you must love me now. I've got problems.
I have to admit,
I have so many problems with the relationships in this film.
Before I found out that she was like a triple agent or whatever, however you want to call it,
triple agent.
But like, I was like, this bitch is like, this guy is wanted for murder. He might. During the Cold War, this guy might be a domestic terrorist, but my book's real boring, so I want him to just shove it up my ass and rearrange my guts.
Oh my god. We're gonna get into that. But before we get into that, those juicy bits, I do have one synopsis for North by Northwest, courtesy of IMDb.
That's interesting because this movie, it's all about the interweaving twists and turns and all that. So it's very interesting to hear what a synopsis of this movie would be.
I mean, it's going to be very one sentence. The synopsis says, a New York City advertising executive goes on the run after being mistaken for a government agent by a group of foreign spies and falls for a woman whose loyalties he begins to doubt. Dun, 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 dun.
Fair. Yeah.
It's fair. I mean, that's it. If you had to summarize it in one sentence, that's pretty much it.
Brian, can we talk about the main conceit of this movie and how the plot doesn't make any sense?
We can, but before we get to that, I want to share our terrible reviews.
Okay.
Not our reviews of our podcast. Our podcast is fucking awesome. But I'm talking about terrible reviews of this
Only
movie.
5 stars for us. Yeah,
only 5 stars for us.
This will be very interesting because this movie is so beloved. I can't wait to see the 1-star reviews.
Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with this is a new tactic that I'm doing, trying to, work with our Gen Z and millennial folk like myself, not Gen Z, but millennial folk, and give you some terrible reviews of these movies, whether good, bad, indifferent. Like North by Northwest, a lot of people consider it's like one of the greatest films of all time. But believe it or not, some people might not feel that way. So first up, here is our first review. This movie is boring and uninspired.
Wow.
Every character is flat. Roger Thornhill is rude, and I do not care if he lives or dies. Unfortunately for me, he lives. The most interesting thing about North by Northwest is the crane shot and the mirroring shot in the field.
Okay. This I don't know you, but you seem like you might have some like personal issues that you're upset that the fictional character didn't die.
I mean, these are from Letterboxd, John, so take it with what you will.
I mean, I get it. Like, I'm upset Shooter McGavin survived Happy Gilmore. That
Me
motherfucker
too.
deserved it.
That motherfucker. But I mean, the thing is like Thornhill is kind of a fucking dick.
Yeah, but I do think that it's like,
I don't want him dead.
Right. But if you watch movies from the 50s, this is, whether it is an accurate representation or an exaggerated representation, this is how men were in these movies of that time. It's across the board.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. And it's kind of like the, hey, we have to have, that's the machismo, or as we would call it nowadays, toxic masculinity. It's pretty much what it is.
Oh, and here's a fun fact about ages, because I think it's important. Jimmy Stewart, wrong movie.
Wrong movie.
We had two Jimmys in a row. Cary Grant is 20 years older than Eva Marie Saint, but here's a fun fact: he's only 8 years younger than his mother in the film.
I was gonna say that the whole mother relationship there doesn't match at all age-wise. Like, they do not look at all like mother and son. They look like husband and wife.
Yeah. If it was the real world, those two would be married.
They would be married.
But in Hollywood, no, that's Cary Grant's mom. He'd be banging somebody that he probably diapered, you know. Ugh.
Ew. Gross. All right. So here's our next review, John.
Okay. All right.
Wow. Another blonde woman in a Hitchcock movie. ... Shocking.
Not exactly the most nuanced review I've ever seen in my life, where a lot of women are blonde, you know? I don't know.
But, I mean, come on. This is Hitchcock after all. The man really loves, he's got a serious fetish for blondes. Like, I imagine that Hitchcock would go to a barbershop and collect all of the blonde hair and fuck it.
Yeah. Oh, it's all of his many merkins that he wears when he jerks off. But yeah, but if that's your nuanced review of the movie, where if I was like, Batman v Superman, do you know why I hate this movie? It's like, I can't wait for John to break down the 300 reasons this movie didn't work. Ben Affleck's from Boston. It's typical. It's like, that's not really a sound logical review.
I love how you attack the reviewers, not the movie.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you're lovely people, and I'd love to share a bowl of soupski with you. But these reviews are a little out there.
To be fair, I picked ones purposely that were funny. That's why.
And I'm sure some of them are fine people.
Very fine reviews. Perfect reviews. All right. Let's go to our third one here. All right, this one has actually more than one sentence.
Oh, wow.
This movie is a good example to me of something that was probably groundbreaking and important in context, but has since improved upon so substantially that it's hard to even justify enjoying it in its original form, because everything in it has since been done to death and done so much better. Also, Hitchcock has this particular brand of extremely unlikable film characters, and these two are particularly egregious. Frowny face.
Okay.
You're like, the last one, fuck you, reviewer. This one, okay.
I got two different schools of thought on this. Like, it takes somebody to change film for everybody else. Like, they walk so somebody else can run, you know, without Journey to the Moon by Georges Méliès. We don't have film as we know it. We don't have editing as we know it. So yeah, I would hope that with advancements in technology and money and freedom from the studio system, that people would take this and run with it and do it better. That's kind of par for the course. But the second part, I don't know if I can find fault in that. Like, yeah, a lot of the characters in Hitchcock movies are fucking dicks. You're right on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked a little bit about this when we were discussing Rear Window and the role that tension building brings, and how really it's a slow slog of a film up until the last like 20 minutes. And I think one of the things that we talked about was just that, you know, at the time that was groundbreaking. At the time that built up was, you know, something that was refreshing and new. But we've seen it done so much better. I think that's what this reviewer is really talking about, is that we're like, yeah, it's great, but I think people like look to this movie and go, oh my God, it's still so good even after this many years. I don't know if I buy that one. I think there's an appreciation you can have for what it did at the time. But I think that it can be done better nowadays. But I also agree with you, John, and agree with the reviewer that Hitchcock really likes making all of his characters fucking assholes.
He probably sees them as just being flawed, but yeah, no,
they're shades of himself.
Pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much.
But I do think it's apples to screwdrivers to like compare advancements in technology. Like, is it a trip to the moon or a journey to the moon?
Trip to the moon.
Trip to the moon. Yeah. That's like comparing a trip to the moon to Endgame. Yeah. Oh, hey. Oh my God. The special effects are so much better at Endgame. Yes, because 100 fucking years passed, and when you know it, there's been some advancements in filmmaking. So.
No, I get you there. All right, let's go to our last bad review here. COVID film diary number 10. I really hate it when a woman falls in love with a man for no reason at all. Not wrong. And this is why I wanted to hold off on talking about this, because this review leads right into it.
I got some hot takes on this one. Okay, first off, this person is clearly just in the beginning of COVID when we were all scared and didn't know what was going on, and our brains weren't thinking right. That's why we all watched Tiger King.
Fucking love Tiger King. I don't care what anyone says.
But initially, she didn't fall in love with him for real. It was because she was a secret agent. Now, you could say by the end of the movie, her falling in love with him, yeah, that did seem odd. But this is during the Hays Code. This is during Eisenhower's America. You're not going to get nuance. You're just going to get Cary Grant's handsome. And so every bitch wants to get stuck.
I agree with this reviewer wholeheartedly, because I'm sorry, every time that Eva Marie Saint is on screen, it's just like, wow, you're tan and tall. I love you. Please fuck me now. And you could say, all right, fine. She was a triple agent or wherever the fuck it is. But like, she must have already fallen in love with that man from the first moment, because even when Cary Grant is like pissed off at her at the it was at the auction, and like saying all these horrible things about her, because again, this is the 50s and denigrating women is a thing. She's just taking it and crying because she loves him.
Hey,
Ugh.
He's the best 3.4 inches she ever had. But
I guess. But oh man. Yeah, good reviews. I mean, terrible film, terrible reviews, but I mean,
interesting reviews.
Interesting reviews. I try to find the ones that are funny because I want to see what your reaction is. John never sees these reviews. That's the thing to know. John goes in cold. I know what these are because I do the searching for them, but I always want to be like, what's John going to say when he sees these? And you never disappoint. So with that said, let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about the key points of this. So, we start off North by Northwest with, and again, I fall in love with this stuff because I do motion graphics for a living. I do visual effects. We get a Saul Bass opener, man.
Oh, Bass can have my ass. He's so good.
He's so good with that score underneath it. And for those of you who do not know, Saul Bass is the father of modern film titles. So back before you had end credit sequences like you see in every fucking Marvel movie, you had these amazing title sequences that were done that led into the opener of the film. Like, think of like James Bond. And Saul Bass was one of the first people, not the first, but one of a group of first. He's probably the most well-known, who really used motion graphics at the time to convey the stories within the film. And, you get this, it's an interesting way because prior to this, it was just text on screen and that's it. But you've got movement with this type. You've got color that's splashed in with the black and the green all kind of composed over each other. And it just works. And it doesn't necessarily have anything directly related to the film in this one. If you want that, look at Psycho. You can actually tell a lot about what's happening in the movie from looking at the opening credit sequences. But John, what did you think about it?
Oh yeah, I loved it. And like, I'd be very interested because Brian, you and I can do that in a heartbeat now. And I'm not saying that Brian and I are fucking geniuses or anything, but with modern editing technology, it's pretty simple. But I'd be very curious to see or learn how Saul did the effect from the green with the lines to merge it into the actual skyscraper building. Because I'm like, God, how do they do that in 1959? But
yeah. I mean, it was, from what I understand, it was a manual process. I mean, you literally were using some type of optical printer technology to kind of print those things on and superimposition them. But a lot of it also was just manual animating and manual movement. So that's kind of how you did it, you know. But it's impressive to watch that done. And I always show Psycho's opening credit sequence when I teach, you know, motion graphics, because like it's the one everybody remembers, it's the one everyone thinks about. But like North by Northwest is like the proto version of that. It's like, let's see what we can do with just moving text in a way that's interesting.
Oh, I got it. It's the Abyss to Terminator 2.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And what was it? Sherlock Holmes Jr. is the proto to the Abyss.
Ooh, yes.
Did you know that?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I go deep on my Cameron on
you
YouTube.
go deep on your Cameron.
but yeah, no, that's perfectly true. Because like, for people who don't watch older movies, there used to be a rule where the credits had to come at the beginning of the movie, not the end. Star Wars was actually the one that kind of changed all that. I'm not certain that they were absolutely the first to do it, but I mean, George Lucas took a hefty fine by putting his credits at the end of the movie. And Psycho was one of the first and only movies I remember where the title sequence didn't bore me. The music and the way that the credits were coming in and they were breaking up and all that, you know. Usually when I watch older movies and the credits are at the beginning, I might skip them if the movie isn't that great, or if it's a great movie, I don't offend it by skipping it. But I'm usually like, yawn, when can I get past the caterer's name and actually watch the movie?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like with these older films, they list everybody in the opening credit sequence. They leave no one on the table for the most part. But yeah, you start
Mr. Hitchcock, cigarette provider, Tom Smith. Yeah,
pretty much. But you start off with that opening credit sequence, and then you get introduced to Cary Grant, who's just an asshole. He just comes out as an asshole to his secretary.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird that we don't see her ever again. I guess it's just
she doesn't exist. She's not important. She's not important.
It reminds me, guys, in a weird way, like of Ghostbusters, like the scene with Venkman where he's conning these people because he wants to sleep with the woman, and he's not, like, he's basically a con artist of a professor, and we kind of learned that right off the bat with Venkman. And I guess this is like our introduction to Cary Grant, who doesn't stop moving, is interestingly in the field of manipulation, because that's essentially what advertising is. But everybody thinks that they're being manipulated by him later in the movie, which they absolutely are not.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a nice dichotomy there. But yeah, Cary Grant is going to meet, I guess, buddies at a social club, because that's what people did in the 50s. And he is inadvertently mistaken for a spy. And that's what kind of kicks it off.
And that is my biggest problem with this movie.
How so?
If they have no idea what this spy looks like, why do they think it's Cary Grant? And why are they so sure that it's him? The whole foundation of this movie, unless, Brian, you're about to come with me and go, aha, John, you missed a key point. Like, the whole foundation of this movie doesn't hold up, because why in God's name do they think it's Cary Grant? They don't know what this guy looks like.
I got nothing. I wish I could. I wish I could give you something, John, to say like, this is the reason why. But I agree with you. There's nothing at all that subtext said that it explains why these goons think that Cary Grant is this spy. They don't have any idea of what this person looks like. All they know is that this guy has been checking in and out. That apparently one time he was in Pittsburgh. Good for you, buddy. You came to Steel City.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that actually says this is what this person looks like. So it is just guessing. Like, why is it that out of everyone in that social club, they pick him? It's never explained.
The plot needs to happen.
The plot needs to happen.
And I mean, for one of the, if not one of the greatest films of all time, one of the greatest Hitchcock films of all time, there's a huge glaring plot hole to start the movie.
True.
Yeah. Because before we find out that is it Callahan?
What the
fake agent, the red herring agent.
Oh, I forgot his name.
Yeah, but yeah, but
I forgot his name.
But long story short, like, you know, the UN is making up a fake person to lure the Cold War enemies off their tail. Is that this person isn't even real? They're chasing a ghost, so there's nothing even to compare to. You know, and we find that out. It's like, maybe watching the beginning part of this movie, maybe the guy looks just like Cary Grant. He doesn't even exist.
True. And by the way, it's Kaplan.
Kaplan. Yeah.
Kaplan.
I'm thinking.
But again, no one knows the Kaplan.
Yeah.
Callahan Auto Parts. Brake pads. But yeah, no, there's nothing to say like what this person looks like. So they're literally just taking a shot in the dark. But Thornhill, Cary Grant, he gets swept away, and I love how he does like what no person in reality would ever do when shown a gun and kidnapped. He's talking all tough guy to these people. Like, I'm going to jump out the way. It's like, dude, they fucking shoot you.
Yeah. He's glib as all fuck. Yeah.
He's just so glib. He's like, oh, you're going to kidnap me? Huh? You're going to point a gun at me? Let me get the door. Door is locked. That's another thing that bothered me too. And this is what I don't understand. So Cary Grant goes to grab the door to escape from the car, and it's locked. But then they get to Van Damme's house, and it opens from the inside. Like, they're able to, like, did they put child locks on and then somehow turn them off? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
It's goon safety locks.
It's goon safety locks.
Goons. Hire goons.
Yeah. So, you know, Thornhill goes into this fancy mansion, which honestly, it almost made me think like they were going to hunt him. Like, I thought that's what this whole thing was going to be. Game. Yes, most dangerous. I thought it was going to be most dangerous game deal where they're going to hunt him, and like he'd have to survive, and that's how it would be. And I'm like, okay, well that makes sense. So, but then, you know, it's explained that, you know, they think Thornhill is this man named Kaplan, that he is an agent, and that, you know, they give him a choice of some kind. I don't know what the choice is, but they're just like, well, you can either work with us or not. And he chooses to say, fuck you, basically, to them. And they decide to drown him in alcohol.
Which, look, man.
Not the smartest way to kill somebody.
I mean, not to be too forward here, dear audience, but my father was the alcoholic to end all alcoholics, and it's going to take more than 1/5 of whiskey to get somebody that drunk.
Oh, they gave him the whole bottle.
Yeah, but still,
whole bottle of bourbon.
My old man would probably just be, because he's an asshole, driving around very well at a 5th of.
To be fair, though, John, okay, I don't know if Cary Grant has the same tolerance as your dad. Probably has a human's tolerance. Yeah. Okay. But I forgot to mention this, that one of the goons, the head goon, is played by Martin fucking Landau.
Yeah. Which, I'm
greatest creep eyes ever.
Yeah. I remember pointing him out to Christine. I'm like, do you know who that is? And she went, oh, and she mentioned like a famous like horror icon. I went, no. And she said, has he ever played Dracula? And I went, technically, yes.
Technically, he did.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Boris Karloff's a cocksucker. So.
Very true. But yeah, so Martin Landau like shoves a bunch of alcohol down his throat, and we cut to, hey fellas, quick heads up from the grooming front lines. Shaving your jewels doesn't have to be risky business anymore. Thanks to our friends over at Manscaped and their Lawnmower 5.0, I got one right here, you can forget about nicking your bits. This trimmer is all about keeping things smooth and safe, so you can trim with confidence. Head over to manscaped.com and snag 20% off plus free shipping with the code CINEMA20. With Manscaped, it's easy grooming and no surprises. John, we've known each other for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever sliced your balls?
Oh, all the time. I've got very sensitive nads. Let me just
sensitive
put it that
nads.
way. I try not to go down there too much because my balls end up looking like everybody who wasn't Harrison Ford in Witness. Just Amish nuts all the time.
I mean, for me, I have had problems where I literally have sliced down there and it looks like a horror show, and I don't want people's balls to look like a Cinnabites plaything. So we know that dudes get a little heebie-jeebies when it comes to going down there. And if you want to get a close shave, honestly, this guy right here, the Lawnmower 5.0, can do it for you. This 5th generation trimmer features 2 interchangeable next-gen skin-safe blade heads, a standard one for taking a little bit off the top. All right, John's got one right there. And a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. I use this one right here because I want to go smooth. With dual LED spotlights, you'll achieve better visibility, making every trim more precise and hassle-free.
You could even shave your balls in complete darkness now if you really wanted to, thanks to the LED light. Although I really don't recommend it, but you could.
He's right. Worried you'll make a mess? This bad boy is also waterproof. You can shave in the shower, in the bath, or in the ocean. I don't know why you would shave in the ocean, but guess what? You can. I love this thing because it does come in a compact case, making it really great for travel. Trust me, this trimmer will be your crown jewel's best buddy.
Brian, let me ask you something.
Sure.
Listeners to our podcast, or even viewers now, can they get some kind of special deal?
Oh, they can. You can get 20% off and free shipping with the code CINEMA20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code CINEMA20 at manscaped.com. Show your balls some love and feel free as a dove. One of the funniest scenes in this whole movie, like I
don't
could
think
not
it's supposed to be.
I couldn't take any of it seriously. And I was watching this movie at like 10:30 at night last night, so I'm like, I can't be laughing because I'll wake everybody up. And I'm just like, this is so ridiculously funny. Like, how the fuck is this Hitchcock? But it's basically, Thornhill is completely drunk off his fucking ass, and he's driving this car because they're trying to shove the car off a cliff and kill him. Okay, but he, using his super drunk powers, is able to drive this fucking car. Like, probably I'd say he drove it for a good, what would you say, mile and a half?
Oh, at least, yeah.
At least a mile and a half before finally crashing. And he's just making the worst faces ever. Like it's almost like Hitchcock didn't know what a drunk looked like. So he just said, hey, just try to pretend you're drunk.
And look, I know adrenaline is kind of a lie. Like, if you're drunk, you're drunk. But if, like, he was driving for fear of his life, I do feel that he would have got some kind of like boost of adrenaline, that he would not have been driving well, but he would have been more aware of his surroundings, because it seemed like he was like dozing in and out while driving.
Let's be honest here, John. He would be dead.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he would have crashed into something, but
he would have died within 5 seconds. He would not have survived any longer. He would have died within 5 seconds of driving that car. It would have gone off a cliff, because the whole highway is literally, it's a cliff highway. So like any wrong turn and boom, you're in the ocean.
Which it's so strange that they wanted to make it seem like an accident where he was drunk and drove off a cliff in a stolen car and he would have blown up. And I don't even know if they had the forensics team to even judge flaming corpse's alcohol level.
Probably knew the teeth.
Wait, why did they just fucking kill him at the mansion? It's the 50s. You can get away with anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
I mean, it's possible. I just I never understood the whole drunk driving thing with them. And then you've got the rear projection also going on too. And it just looks ridiculously goofy. Every time rear projection shows up.
Yeah. I kind of love that with these older movies. It's kind of like when you watch like Kojak the Night Stalker and it's like the effects are sucks. Like you're like, oh, but it's the charm of this, where I'm like, whenever I see these old movies and I see rear projection, I'm like, that oddly makes me feel like happy or comfortable.
Yeah. I love the rear projection, but at the same time, it's clearly dated.
Oh, God, yeah. But I think that's the charm is the datedness of it.
So after his whole drunk driving misadventure, Thornhill ends up going back to court. Well, not back to court. He's going to court for the first time. And I love how the privilege that this man has in the way he talks to everyone in the court. He talks to the judge like a fucking asshole. He talks to the cops like a fucking asshole. He's just like, I tell you, there's people trying to murder me and you're spending all this time with me. So he's just, no one else could talk this way, by the way, to any law enforcement officer ever.
Well, between this and Mad Men, he's a white man in advertising where I guess like you rule the fucking world. The law does not apply to you. If you're an advertiser.
But like, the way the man talks to a judge, he's just a jerk. And the best part is the judge is like, well, okay, we're going to send some detectives with you because you have an honest face. That's tanned.
You got a handsome face that apparently no woman can resist. Because this is a later scene in this movie where he has to like sneak through another woman's hospital room, and she's like, "Oh, don't leave!" Just absolutely smash me. But
yeah, I guess that Cary Grant back then was smashable. I mean, I don't see.
Oh, he was the heartthrob, of the time, But
I guess so if you're into that sort of thing. Old saggy balls, that have skin cancer on them because of the amount of tanning. But yeah, after this, they go to Van Damme's house and find that no one's there, and that that it almost looks like it was completely phony and made up. Like his mother comes to them. This is where we see the mother and how the age looks almost identical. Like they look like they're the same age, but that's mother. And they open up the bar where apparently the bourbon was at, and it's not bourbon anymore. It's just books. And, no one is around who was there the past night. And the I guess the maid is saying like, oh yeah, you were here and you were drunk and you left. So they're not corroborating his story at all. It makes, Thornhill look terrible. But then after this, we get some weird stuff that happens.
Well,
really weird stuff.
Before you even mention that, here's my favorite line in the movie and my so much enjoyment on inflation, where his mother just tells him, just pay the $2.
Oh man, I forgot about that. Yes, apparently a drunk driving ticket is only $2.
It costs less than a Gatorade does now.
I mean, like, even like back then, it sounds like, oh yeah, $2 wasn't a big deal because the mother's like, just pay the $2 fucking. But I love that. I love that. It's like, oh well, no suspension of license, no nothing, just pay $2 and you're good, right? Fucking ridiculous.
Driving drunk. $2.
Yeah. So after this, Thornhill gets the idea that he's going to go to the UN General Assembly building in New York, because apparently the person whose house he was at was actually a person at the UN, like an ambassador or something at the UN. So he thinks like he's going to track down this person and just go to the UN building. I love how the lack of security in this building is. Like, this guy walks clearly off the street, gets right up, really close, in meeting distance, with a foreign dignitary, and no one stops him.
I think this was just par for the course for the times. Like, my mom told me a story in the late 1970s when she was in college that her and her friends got drunk in a dorm room, and they had a question for the author Norman Mailer, and they just reached out to operators, and they said, can you connect me to Norman Mailer in New York City? And they did. And Norman Mailer picked up, and they asked the question, and he just immediately hung up on them. And I'm like, yeah, there's a reason that there were so many serial killers in the 1970s. It was fucking easy.
It was easy. But I just, like, the man literally goes through two secretaries. Okay, he goes through two secretaries and is able to get a hold of this foreign dignitary, no problem, right? Mm-hmm. And it just, within seconds, he's like, wait a minute, you're not the person who I talked to last night. Who are you? And then, of course, within a second, that guy gets stabbed in the back. And
Baron Samediah throws a fucking knife in his back.
And Thornhill, of course, being the dumbass ever, grabs the knife and is like looking guilty already. Mm-hmm. Like, why would you suddenly grab the knife of somebody in a crowded room of people? Like, wouldn't something go off in your brain like, this looks like I might be guilty?
And here's a plot hole I have. If your plan is to get this man, kidnap him again, make his death look like an accident, why frame him for murder?
True. I mean, because I guess he's a patsy. Like, that was the whole thing. Is like, you know, he's not the patsy. They want to off him. He's like a super secret agent in their minds. Yes. But you're right. Why would you make him wanted for murder if you're trying to kill him too?
It would be like if like the CIA framed Lee Harvey Oswald for killing a hobo like a week before the Kennedy assassination.
Remember that guy who killed a hobo, Lee Harvey Oswald? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he also killed the president.
Well, wait. He's already in prison. We caught him. Oh, shit.
Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this whole killing of this UN guy is what kind of precipitates the, chase the rest of the film has, right? Because it then becomes a matter of Thornhill's trying to escape from the police and also discover who this Kaplan person really is. Because he thinks like, well, if I can find the real Kaplan, I can clear my name.
It's the Richard Kimball part of the movie.
Yes, it's the Richard Kimball part of the movie. So the problem, though, is that there is no Kaplan. He doesn't know that. Kaplan was dreamed up by 4 or 5 CIA agents or some other type of super secret spy organization. We don't really get an idea. They're called the United States Intelligence Agency. Take it for what it is. But they're run by this man called the Professor. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, too, they're like, well, we can't. We created this fake person to throw off our enemies, but because we can't sacrifice the person we have on the inside. And then when you only introduce your female heroine 45 minutes into the movie, and she immediately wants to get hot dogged by what she thinks is a murderer, I'm like, and then she sends a letter to the people like, what do you want me to do with him in the morning? I'm like, it's her. It's her. She's the dual agent.
Oh, I knew exactly that she was a dual agent the minute
were they supposed to be tricking us there?
I guess so. Maybe the audiences in 1959 were tricked, but I immediately was like, well, they're mentioning there's another agent, and the female heroine has not been introduced yet. Of course, that's the double agent. Knew that coming a mile away. But yeah, you're right. Like, it's a lot of this is very, very obvious when you really think about it. But after this whole incident at the UN, Thornhill is on a train. That's where he meets Eve, and yes, they do totally bone. After only meeting for like 30 minutes.
Which, if this is your first time watching this movie, you're like, this is weird.
Well, it's so bizarre. Like she is just so into him within 5 seconds, and is just like, well, we can go back to my room and have some sex. Like, okay.
Sometimes, maybe you meet somebody at a club and you just vibe, and you go home and basically have sex with a total stranger. But in this movie, she knows that he is wanted for murder.
Yes.
And when they're like canoodling in her room, she's like, what are you going to do? Murder me next? And he's like, maybe I will. In like a bizarrely coquettish way. It's like, no, don't be coquettish about murder.
Well, what it reminds me of, it's almost like if you went to a Barnes & Noble and met someone and immediately had sex in the Barnes & Noble. That's kind of what this feels like. Like, you were at the magazine rack looking at magazines, and you meet someone and they're just like, hey, I like the way that you flipped that magazine. By the way, are you also the person who's on the front cover of the newspaper saying I killed the UN person? And oh yeah, you're really sexy flipping that magazine. Let's go back to that. Let's go to the Starbucks area and have some sex. That's what it feels like. It's so weird.
By the way, I saw you looking at the Better Homes and Gardens. Are you Ted Bundy? If so, you can do anything inside or outside of my body.
It's so weird. It's very off-putting. And it is definitely not realistic. I think when people are talking about how some of the dialogue just feels so wooden, it's these scenes.
I just was so grateful because, again, I remember nothing from my first viewing of this movie. I should have been older. Is that she is a double agent or what have you? I'm like,
triple.
Oh yeah, like, thank God she's just manipulating him, because otherwise this is just.
It's weird.
Fucking madness. It reminds me of like Ryan George on YouTube, his pitch meetings channel.
Yes.
Like, it's like, well, it would be very hard for her to like accept him and fall in love with him. Actually, super easy, barely an inconvenience.
I mean, it's not an inconvenience for her at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, after the whole train ride, again, leading to the fact that, of course, Eve is in cahoots with the villains in this. She's able to find who Kaplan is within 5 seconds, get a hold of him, and gives Thornhill an address to meet him at. This is, again, a person that Thornhill met yesterday.
Yeah, and also
yesterday.
Her main reason is, I'll call him because it would really seem weird if a bad guy made a phone call, because he disguises himself as somebody that like takes your bags if you obviously pay enough when you leave the train.
I think it's a porter is what they're called.
Porter. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. And it's like, apparently a porter making a phone call is apparently the most outrageously bizarre thing you could ever possibly imagine. So she's like, I'll make the phone call for you. And I'm like, maybe I just don't understand Eisenhower's America, but like, why would it be weird if the guy made a phone call? Maybe he's calling, he travels around the world. Maybe he's calling his wife, see how the kids are doing. I don't know.
It's strange. It's a whole thing that's strange. And it leads to the unrealistic nature of their whole relationship, and just kind of, to me, says like, yeah, of course this person is working with Van Damme.
It's a plot convenience. Yeah.
Yeah. It's total plot convenience. So yeah, Thornhill takes Kendall at her word and goes to the middle of fucking nowhere and waits to meet Kaplan in the middle of fucking nowhere.
So okay.
John, I guess the middle of fucking nowhere. This guy's a genius.
I know that this is one of the most like amazing, captivating, stressful scenes in the history of movies.
Is it though?
Well, I mean, it is by most people's regards, but my logic can't help come in, and I have so many questions. Is that
almost sounds like a plug.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know where there could be so many questions on YouTube. But anyways, if your idea is to shoot him with a plane, or apparently just hit him with a plane.
So I gotta ask you, did they have a gun? Yeah. Were they shooting him with a gun and also trying to kill him with a plane?
I don't know if the plane had turrets or if somebody was shooting a machine gun from it. I don't think that was ever clearly laid out. But like, if you bring him out in the middle of nowhere and your idea is to shoot him from a plane, shoot him on the ground. You fucking imbeciles.
Why would you fly around and make yourself a moving target? He can't go anywhere. One, he's just walking and running.
Yeah,
he's not in another plane. He's not in a car. He's done nothing.
And the thing is, like, as you said, he's by himself and he's expecting to meet somebody. So if he goes up and goes, "Hey, are you the guy?" And he goes, "Yeah," and then he pulls a gun out and shoots him in the face, because. And I know that like they want to make it look like it's an accidental murder for a lot of the movie. But if your plan is to shoot him from a plane, shoot him from the ground.
Yeah, like I thought I'm like, if I was making this film, I'd have whoever was going to kill him in the cornfield.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, put him in the cornfield. That way you could be hidden and no one would see you. And he's out in the middle of fucking nowhere with no cover. Just take the motherfucker out. Well, why would you go through this elaborate, I'm going to have a plane? And of course, I know why. It's because it's fucking Alfred Hitchcock. And he's like, oh, it'd be cool to have this really cool plane just come sweeping in, kind of kill him off. And it's going to play the audience. Like, is he going to get hit? Is he not? But it makes zero sense if you think about it.
Boy, who's flying this plane? John Denver? Jesus Christ. Like, they have no sense of their own safety.
Jesus Christ. John, come on. Come on.
Rocky Mountain High. I'm leaving on a jet plane.
Oh, jeez.
But yeah, and the scene ends bizarrely too, where he's like, "Hey, big truck, stop. And the truck's like, "No, hey, get the fuck out of my way." And they finally brake because they have to, or else they're going to run over famous movie star Cary Grant. And he ends up like underneath the car. And the plane just almost seems like it just kamikazes itself right into the fucking tanker truck.
Oh, it absolutely kamikaze. It was
like, why?
Nothing caused it to lose control.
Yeah.
But it did lose control and it crashed straight into that tanker truck, causing a Terminator 2 level explosion.
Well,
I mean, it was like, it'd be cool if the T-1000 came out of the fire.
Or if it was Terminator 1 after the explosion, like the pilot of the airplane was just the metal endoskeleton of the Cyberdyne system model.
Well, I was going to say what would be really cool is if this was like a universe mashing of Terminator North by Northwest, where Van Damme really is working with Cyberdyne and Skynet
very early
on, and like, the T-1000 comes back from the future.
It's John Connor's
Cary Grant
grandfather.
Yes. And it's just like you have that Terminator music, duh, duh, like that whole thing happening with T-1000 trying to kill Cary Grant. That would have been great. That's how you improve this movie, by the way.
Hell yeah, liquid Terminators.
Liquid Terminators. Yeah, but Cary Grant survives because he's a tough motherfucker to kill. Or he's just being hunted by the most incompetent goons ever. I think it's the latter. I think they are the most incompetent goons ever. But yeah, he makes it back to Chicago from the middle of fucking nowhere. Don't ask me how he did that. And he's really pissed off at Eve. Because, she gave him the wrong information that nearly got him killed.
And the only scene that absolutely infuriates me in this movie is when he's like, yeah, see, transatlantic dialogue, see, let's go up to your hotel room, see, man, and they go up and it seems like they're having a coquettish, glib like flirty back and forth, like, and the movie indicates to us in the previous scene that he knows she set him up, but yet he's treating her kind of like an old friend that he wants to fuck him. This woman tried to murder you, dude.
I think all that sun exposure went to his brain.
Yeah,
I really do.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a very weird back and forth conversation where like any normal person would be like, you totally tried to kill me. Why are you trying to kill me? Who do you work for? And it isn't until a scene or two later that we discover that, you know, Eve is totally working with Van Damme.
Yeah, but it's weird because during that scene in the hotel room, Cary Grant's like, hey, I'm gonna go spud one off in the shower, and she goes, oh, my perfect opportunity to just fucking bail.
Yeah, because she tried to kill him.
Yeah, we have an extended auction scene that
the auction scene's hilarious.
That Cary Grant is using to his advantage to get with the police to try to save his life, and then that's when like the CIA folks, I'm assuming CIA, I don't know, are like,
they're American intelligence organization, John.
Aha, yeah. Let's not put a label on it. You know, we got the Hays Code after all, God damn it. But they're like, yeah, hey, we know you're not that guy, and we know you're innocent, but can you do us a favor? Can you like pretend to be this guy for another day? Go to Mount Rushmore, you know, be a pal, be a buddy.
Yeah, buddy, because you know, I know we didn't help you out before, and
we left you out.
We left you to die.
Yeah,
and it's only by, you know, circumstance that you happen to survive. You know, sorry we weren't there when that airplane was trying to kill you, and that explosion, and like, you know, you're on the train. I mean, you had some sex with a hot 20-something-year-old. That was good, right? You wouldn't have got that if you didn't, you know, get set up for murder. You know, so like, yeah, it's very weird how the professor's just like, just do us a favor. Be Kaplan for 24 hours. Okay. We need you to infiltrate this guy. And we need, you know, Kendall's actually one of our people.
And the way he convinced him is like, they're going to take the bitch and throw her in the ocean. And he's like, oh no, but she gives me a boner. And then he agrees to go do it.
That's the only reason why he does it. Is like, well, there's not any other hot blondes out there.
Yeah.
This is the only one.
Yeah,
that's ever existed. Even though she tried to kill me.
Is this one of the first textbook definitions of set piece endings? By the way, like, it's gonna happen in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, at Mount Rushmore because. Wow, look, Mount Rushmore.
I think this is definitely one of those first types of movies that was going for the grandiose, like, ending. You know, I mean, clearly you had movies before that were like the big epics, but this one, it really like makes those gigantic set pieces and matte paintings, because let's be honest, that's what they are, matte paintings, really like take up the scope of it. Like even the UN building is a giant matte painting. Interiors. Mount Rushmore is a giant matte painting with some, you know, practical things here and there. But yeah, I do think like they were going for the larger than life. And you also got to figure, John, like this is 1958. So this is right around the time when television is becoming really, really popular in every home in America. So this is at the time when the movie theaters are like, well, how the fuck do we keep people coming to the theaters? And well, maybe let's make these gigantic set pieces they can't get on, you know, their TV. So there's that too.
Oh yeah, and that makes perfect sense. Yeah, it's a very good point. But this movie reminds me in only one very specific way, because you're probably gonna be like, where is he going with this? It reminds me of The Batman.
Where are you going with this?
The most recent one is that it felt like when they caught the Riddler in that movie, it's like, oh, the movie's over. Oh wait, no, there's bombs that are gonna flood Gotham, and this movie still has another like 38 minutes to go. When when Jimmy Stewart, what the fuck is wrong with me?
Hitchcock did a lot of stuff with Jimmy Stewart, so I get it.
When Cary Grant goes to like confront, the enemy of this movie,
Van Damme,
yeah, Jean-Claude Van Damme. But when he goes to confront Van Damme, I'm like, oh, this is the ending of the movie. This is the climax of the movie. And then I look at the runtime, I'm like, oh, this motherfucker still has like 30 minutes to go.
Is this where Eve shoots him with the blanks?
Yep. Yeah, with blanks, with the little kid closing his ears. Did you notice that?
I did not notice the little kid closing his ears. No.
Oh, it must have been like take 5 or 6, and the kid must have been annoyed by the loud banging sound. If you look right past Eva Marie Saint, like to the right of her, there's a little boy in a blue flannel, and right before she goes to fire the gun, he goes and clogs his ears to avoid the sound of the gunfire, and nobody caught it on set.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. Because clearly he's just like, I don't want to fucking hear this for the 50th time. Fucking Alfred Hitchcock, and he's got to play the gun again. But no, I get what you mean by that. I felt that in total, this movie was extremely long.
Yeah,
I felt extremely drawn out.
And I really enjoyed it, and I thought it is one of Hitchcock's best. And I would say I don't know where I would place it, but I'd say it's probably in the top 100 of movies. But like, God damn, they could have trimmed this sumbitch up. And look, I've got a good attention span. You give me a good 4-hour movie that keeps its pace and keeps its, like, I'm fine. I may have to go up and take a leak from the giant soda I have, but like, I'm okay with the runtime. But this one, I'm like, I feel like some trimming could have been done here. It was like 2 hours and 18 minutes. Maybe find a way to trim out those 18 minutes. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I recently watched Dune Part 2 again because I love that fucking movie. And that also is a like 2.5 hour runtime. And it doesn't feel though like a 2.5 hour runtime. It clearly is condensing parts of that film into a set amount of time, and you do lose some things that were from the book, but like it keeps a pace that keeps you going through that 2.5 hour runtime. North by Northwest feels like a slog. And maybe it's because a lot of those scenes are just real dialogue heavy and not a whole lot happens.
Yeah.
That's the other thing too, is there's moments where like between Thornhill and Kendall where they're just like back and forth, relationship bullshit. And you're just like, one, the acting in this is terrible because the dialogue's terrible. And their performances don't at all have any weight to them. So it makes it feel much longer than it actually is.
I feel the movie is like, and for the master of suspense and one of the greatest directors of all time, they always say show, don't tell. This movie very much is tell, don't show. And I'm not necessarily knocking it for that. For a movie that has all these interweaving things that need revealed to the audience, sometimes you do have to tell and not show because the audience is taken for a loop from the beginning because we don't know all the different interweaving things that go into a story like this. But it does make me think, and I'm sorry, dear audience, for a second Batman reference, for The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger and Christian Bale. Like that movie, I never ever feel the runtime, and it is much longer than this movie. And I don't know if it's sacrilegious to say that like I don't feel the runtime of Dark Knight as compared to North by Northwest, but as good of a movie as North by Northwest is, I do feel that runtime in a way that a movie that is structured perfectly, you don't care the runtime. So
yeah, that's a good point. I think there's some credence to that. I also think it's worth mentioning that both these movies, Dark Knight and North by Northwest, came out at different time periods. And I think that in the 50s, it was normal to almost show everything. like, you know, show someone walking across from one point to the other without having to be like, yeah, we're just going to show them there because we don't need to have that extra stuff. But in the 50s, it was common to just show everything. And that's part of the problem, I think, is that it just really drags out. The pace in this thing is designed to be very long.
Well, an early scene in this movie, like, you want to just talk about simple cuts. We have Cary Grant and his secretary leaving the building, and they start to walk, and she's like, I don't know, it was like, oh, it's cold or something. Can we get a cab? And he goes, hey, it's only 2 blocks. Let's get some exercise. And she's like, no, because I've got a lot of shit to do. And they go in the cab, and they take the cab. Like, maybe just have them leave the building and get in the cab. There, I just shaved off maybe 27 seconds, which doesn't seem like a lot. But if you can do that multiple times, you know, because there's nothing that's said about the characters or the story in him wanting to walk and her wanting to take a cab. So just have them leave the building and immediately get into a cab.
So one thing that ends this movie is, you know, you kind of mentioned the set piece of this, and that is the Mount Rushmore thing where, long story short, everyone falls off Mount Rushmore except for Eve and Thornhill.
Richie Rich did it better.
I was going to say, I immediately thought of Richie Rich and the Rich family vault and the laser that shoots at them, you know, with John Larroquette running it. That's a movie we got to review. That's a great film there.
Maybe we'll do the works of Mr. Macaulay Culkin. But I love the idea that rich people just keep all their money in a vault, you know? It's not like in banks and investments or anything. Yeah.
Well, where do you keep all your money? In stocks.
No, it's Scrooge McDuck. We're just going to jump into a vat of coins and immediately ejaculate.
Yeah. Yeah. But no, you know, Van Damme falls off the mountain and, you know, Martin Landau's creepy eyes get shot in the head.
Mm-hmm.
End of the movie.
Yeah. And it's like, thanks to our brave Canadian Mounties. I know it wasn't, I mean, it was pretty close to Canada.
It was close.
But
yeah.
But it's basically, they're like, oh, shucks. Why did we, or it seems like unsportsmanly to shoot him from behind or something, like, because they're government agents or whatever.
I guess that was the days when government agents cared about how appearances looked.
But I remember the end of this. I just was like curious. Not that I was bored. I was curious. I checked the time code, and it was like 2 minutes and 41 seconds left. I'm like, how is this movie gonna fucking wrap up? And it just goes.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, it just goes to like one of those match cuts. For those that don't understand match cuts, so the villains have been defeated, and a match cuts where you do one thing and then it cuts to another shot, like of another location. You think I'm saying this correctly, Brad?
I mean, it's I mean, basically, it's the same action, and usually framing within 2 different sequences. So in essence, in this sequence here, Eve is hanging by a thread on Mount Rushmore, and Thornhill is trying with all his might to like pull her up. And so the match cut is him pulling her up, and it cuts to them back in the train car.
That's the only way he can nut.
Married, because yes, that's the only way that he can nut. It's the only way he can get it up. You know, whatever floats your boat. You know, some people, it's Barnes Noble. For, you know, Thornhill, it's trains.
You and Barnes and Noble. Yeah. But the ending to this movie is the same problem I have with a lot of movies. Like, for example, Indiana Jones 5 and the Turd of Destiny, or whatever it was called. Is that Indiana
Dump of
Jones,
Destiny is, think, what we called it.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that he's back and everything's resolved in his personal life, but he's still wanted for murder. Like, are we supposed to assume that this government agency has cleared Cary Grant of everything? And if they have, how have they cleared him in society's eyes?
Now, John, do you think that part of that happens to be because we live in a current society where facts, unfortunately, are not 100% facts with some people, that there is a kind of not that agreement that facts are facts, and that you just accept that facts are facts, like that up is down and left is right, and the earth is not flat, amongst other things, and that sort of stuff. But do you think that maybe, like, because we live in a society now where there are people who feel that they are entitled to their own facts, that maybe that is why you are thinking that society might not get that this man is not wanted for murder anymore?
I mean, look, we all thought the juice did it, to make an OJ reference, because he just recently died a couple weeks ago. Unless there is insurmountable proof that comes out that OJ was innocent, I'm going to think that the juice went loose.
He also did write a book saying, "If I did it."
Right. Yeah. That's the
not
most coded way to say I did it. Yeah.
I never understood that. Like, I never understood that. I'm like, dude, are you just asking to get arrested? Are you asking at this point?
Double jeopardy. If he's found innocent, they can't find him guilty.
But come on. Oh, this isn't that type of podcast.
It's like Brock Turner, "If I raped her." Yeah.
Ugh, gross.
Don't forget his name. Don't any of you forget his name.
No. Anyway, that's how this movie ends. John, some final thoughts on North by Northwest.
I look at this film as a capsule. I think it's important to look at any type of film in the era it came out for a variety of different reasons. What was the technology? What was the ability? Was the studio system involved? What were the societal implications of a movie? And I think that audiences have a very easy time, who are not film people, when they look at the Great Train Robbery or, A Journey to the Moon. Like, yes, like they go, okay, well, this is the limitations that they had. But you have to understand that movies in 1959 or 1960 had limitations, just as movies in the 40s and the 70s and so on and so forth. And again, you have to look at them in the contextualization of the time that they came out. And I don't necessarily think it's fair to judge, unless a movie has something that is just like completely unacceptable in it, to judge movies by the abilities that they had at the time and the society at the time, and just kind of take that into consideration into your evaluation of the film. Yes, Cary Grant sucks as a human being in this movie, but most of the leading men did at the time. And yeah, there are a lot of outdated views, but it was also 1958. You have to take all that into consideration, and you have to appreciate a film for its time and appreciate it in the understanding of its time, because film is not just a piece of entertainment, it's a time capsule. And I think you have to appreciate film as a time capsule.
Good point. It's a good point. I can see your point. I think it is worth mentioning, though, like, just that Hitchcock does have a tendency to make asshole characters, right? Like he does.
Yeah.
That's my point. It's like, you could say, like, well, at the time it was acceptable for Cary Grant to be a, piece of shit type of character and treat women this way. And I get that, but I still go with, like, it's still not right. And it's still really hard to root for a character like that. And I think that's part of the problem that I think people have with some of Hitchcock's films, is that these characters that are quote unquote protagonists, you really can't root for them. Like, I think we had the same problem when we were talking about Rear Window, right? Like, Jimmy Stewart was a fucking asshole in that whole movie. He's an asshole to his, the nurse that was helping him. He's an asshole to his girlfriend, and it's like, I don't care what happens to him. You know, there is something to be said about being likable, and that likability factor being something that helps you as the audience relate to that character. So, you know, and that's part of what a film has to do, is it has to get the audience to get in the protagonist's corner to some degree. Doesn't mean that protagonist can't change and can't start off an asshole, but, you know, we still need to try to be in the corner of that person. And I feel that was a problem. Now, one thing that we didn't mention, this is just kind of my final thoughts on it, is that I think that North by Northwest might actually be the first version of a spy film, predating even James Bond. Would you say? Yeah.
And it's strange because, like, you know, James Bond is 007, you know, he works with MI6. Like, it's that this motherfucker was unfortunately thrown into this world. But yeah, I do think that this is, the first, like, not globe-trotting, but United States trotting espionage, who done it, how done it, why done it thriller. Yeah, I would say
it also just kind of, it keeps in a lot of the tropes that we see in Bond films. The uber villain who's got some Machiavellian thing, you know, he wants the MacGuffin, so to speak, in this one, the microfilm, you know, and you mentioned the giant set pieces. Every James Bond film always has giant set pieces to some degree. Okay. And you've got the blonde bombshell that, you know, he just happens to love him so much. And, you know, the whole idea that person could be also in on the danger. So, like, and then that's not even talking about the different action scenes that are in this, even though they're kind of ridiculous, like the drunk driving scene and the airplane scene. But they all have the tropes that eventually would be hammered out in the James Bond films. And I think that's worth mentioning that.
Hello, Mr. Bond. My name is I like to suck a dick.
Oh, shit. Well, good talk. I'll never watch this movie again, personally. That's nothing against the film. It's just, it's a long fucking film.
I would say I kind of agree with you, but if somebody was like, if I was showing it for a class, or a friend of mine said, I have never watched this movie, watch it with me, or if it was on like cable, which is never the way to watch a movie, but you know, if you've seen it 1,000 times, whatever. I'll watch RoboCop 2 on WGN because I've seen it 1,000 times. But but I would watch it, in that sense. Like, but I feel that I've now gotten the impact of North by Northwest, and I kind of agree with you. I don't know if I need to now see it again unless provoked for some reason.
This is not a Sunday afternoon watch. You know, I think that's what I would say. RoboCop 2 is, I mean, let's be honest here. RoboCop 1 and 2, you'll watch those. You'll even watch RoboCop 3. Even just for like the Rip Torn isms that show up in that movie, which are hilarious. You know, but I'm just saying, like, North by Northwest is not the movie you put on a Sunday afternoon when it's raining and you're like, there's something else to do. You'll find something else to do rather than watch this. But it's good to watch and be like, hey, yeah, we saw it. We're done. Never watch it again. With that said, John, where can they find you at on the internet?
OnlyFans. That's
really?
It.
You're doing that now?
Mm-hmm. You know, as the joke has been said 1,000,000 times on this channel, I have people pay me to put my clothes back on. No, but seriously, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram, and over at JDub's Video Nasties. I am within scratching distance of finishing.
You've said that a bunch.
Hey, we do a lot of recordings, Brian.
I know.
I gotta find some time, Brian. But I am so damn close to finishing up the Demolition Man video, and then unfortunately, I have to enter the world of Woody Allen. But that's the whole point of the check-in, I suppose, is to watch horrific crap from crappy people. So
fun. Very fun. Do me a favor. If you like this podcast and you like what we do, do me a favor and share this episode with your friends or any film friends that you're like, hey, you know what, you like Alfred Hitchcock. Listen to these guys talk about North by Northwest. Or you can do us a favor and just go to cinemapsychoshow.com/follow and click on any of the links there and follow us on your favorite podcast app of choice. I got links for Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of them. Literally, they're all there. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and hit the subscribe and the follow and hit the notification bell so that you never miss an episode. And with that said, we will see you next time.
Hello, Mr. Bond. My name is Stain. Schmegma Stain.
Gross.